Hi, I'm Ben of ITIQ. If you're new to this channel, then welcome, and if you're coming back, thanks very much for watching. This video was going to be part 2 of a 2-part series looking at the differences between SharePoint and OneDrive. What I've realized in creating this video is how much there is to cover, and so I think it's probably going to be a 3 or 4-part series. So this one's going to focus on OneDrive, and we'll be going into some depth. So there's quite a lot of stuff to look at. We'll be talking about setting up, configuration, settings, the best use for OneDrive, adding files, how to add files, the web app, syncing and making files available offline, including the sort of statuses and how to tell the difference between the statuses, looking at how to access recent files, sharing files, collaboration, the management and understanding of what's being shared of your files once they're in OneDrive, using OneDrive in Microsoft Word, looking at versioning and restoring previous versions, using OneDrive in conjunction with SharePoint, and we'll kind of wrap up with some troubleshooting. So I think it's going to be quite comprehensive. I'm going to put the chaptering in the timeline, so please do feel free to skip if you feel some of those things aren't applicable to you. But hope the video is really useful. Really keen to have any questions and comments you've got, so please do add them below in the comments box, and please don't forget to like, subscribe and get notified. Thank you very much. So let's start with some of the basics. Both OneDrive and SharePoint are forms of cloud storage. Both of them store stuff in the cloud. I think sometimes people get a bit confused because it looks like OneDrive is a folder on your machine, which is exactly how it's supposed to work. But actually, it's syncing everything to the cloud. So both of them are cloud storage services. The big difference, I think, is that SharePoint is primarily designed to be collaborative, and OneDrive is primarily designed to be used for your own files, or files you're perhaps just going to work with on a draft basis before you put them into SharePoint. I think also the other thing about OneDrive is it gives you the opportunity to create a folder structure, which is much more familiar to most people. So without further ado, we'll take a look at getting some basics set up. Let's start taking a look. I'm going to get Word open ready so we can have a look at how OneDrive works alongside Word. And I would just, while we're doing that, I'm going to go to the search bar at the bottom, start typing in Word. In case you didn't realize what it's possible to do, if you right mouse click on Word, you'll see it says Pin to Taskbar. We're just going to choose Pin to Taskbar because we use Word all the time, so it's useful just to have it sitting on this bottom taskbar. Now next, a really easy way of just checking you're logged in as yourself and as you should be, is to open an application like Word, and I'm just going to accept these privacy settings, and to look at the top. And right now we can see we're logged in as Jane Doe. Of course, this is for demonstration purposes, so all of the information here is anonymized, and Jane is a fictitious person. So we're logged in as Jane. That's great. We'll just minimize that. Now, if we want to check OneDrive is running, which is an important thing to do, if you come down to the bottom of the screen on the right-hand side, where there are in the task bar, where the just left of the time, click the up arrow. We're looking to see OneDrive running there. I can see OneDrive isn't running, so I'm going to type in OneDrive. There we go. Now, normally OneDrive will be set up to run as soon as you log in, but as part of troubleshooting, that's something you can always do, which is to just have a look in that bottom, make sure OneDrive is running. So because this is the first time we've set OneDrive up, and normally this would have been done by our IT department, and normally certain decisions would have been made around policies of how OneDrive was going to be used. That hasn't been the case here. So it's popped up and it's asked if we want to back up folders on this PC. And I think this is a really important point to cover, and I don't want to spend too long on it. But what I would say is don't OneDrive really isn't a form of backup. It's not a comprehensive backup solution. Turning this on could cause complications if you're using macros or any other form of linked files already. And really, I would suggest you turn this off. Don't worry about it. I would use OneDrive as your primary form of storage, because then, of course, your files are going to be available across all of your devices, and you can take full advantage of all of the inherent links between OneDrive and SharePoint and all the other 365 apps. The important point about backup, I think, is that Microsoft doesn't in itself provide backup. It keeps several copies of your data, but in order to be reassured that you've got some backup in place, you really ought to be looking at a third-party cloud backup solution that runs and backs up, ideally, SharePoint and OneDrive and all of your Microsoft 365 tenant. So anyway, with having said that, I'm going to turn all of these off, and I'm going to press OK, and I'm going to press Next. And then it's going to take us through a bit of a tutorial, which you're welcome to go through at your own leisure. Talks about the mobile app, which I'll come on to a bit later as well. So I'm just going to say later to that. Finally, I'm just going to open my OneDrive folder. So now we've got OneDrive basically set up. You'll see there's our OneDrive here. That's our company OneDrive. We've got a couple of test files in it. And if we go back down to the bottom, we will see the cloud is running. That's the OneDrive icon, and it says it's up to date. Now, just a bit of a note on OneDrive running, and especially in relation to Macs. I actually use a Mac myself. And when you install OneDrive on a Mac, it will be set up as an item that gets started when you log in. However, quite often it doesn't start when you log in. So a bit similarly to the Windows taskbar, if you go up to the very top of the screen on a Mac, and you'll just see here, I'm actually running this on a Mac in a Parallels virtual machine. But you'll see the cloud icon, the OneDrive icon, and that's there. And again, that's a way of just checking it's running. If it's not, similarly on a Mac, you can just go to Finder, start typing OneDrive, and then start OneDrive running. So now we've got OneDrive running. I just want to explain one of these columns here. You'll see on the Windows device, you'll see a column that says Status, and there are some folders here with a picture of a cloud. There's one test file here with a picture of a tick. And basically what that's telling us is whether that particular file, folder, or whatever else it might be, whether that's been synced down to our device or whether it's actually just available in the cloud still. So this is saying that it's been synced down to our device. So if we double click it, it's going to be very quick and open up in Microsoft Word. So that's great, but why is it important whether the file we're looking at is running on our machine or in the cloud, and why do we need to be aware about this? Well, if it's running on or from your machine, that means that you can disconnect from the internet and that file will still be available. So for example, if you're working on a laptop and you're taking the laptop home for the weekend, seeing that green tick is going to mean that you know the file's on the laptop, and maybe you don't have internet wherever it is you're traveling. You want that file then, of course, to be local. Knowing that it's in the cloud, of course, will tell you that you're going to need to get an internet connection in the event you want to use that file. So that's a really important distinction to be able to make. And of course, it's nice to have some control over that. So the next thing to look at in terms of how we control what is synced and what's not synced is to go to the settings. There are a couple of different ways of going to the settings. One way is to go straight into your folder, right mouse click on a file, choose OneDrive, and then go to settings. Another way to do it is to go back down to the bottom in the taskbar on the right hand side, click the OneDrive icon, and click the gear at the top, which will give you the drop down that says settings. So when you open your settings up for the first time, it's probably going to come up on the account page. There's nothing, I think, to be too concerned with here. I suggest you don't add multiple accounts. I think multiple OneDrive accounts on one machine can get confusing. On this section here that says choose folders, again, I would suggest you always leave the make all files available ticked. If you don't, it's going to hide certain stuff from the Explorer. So just leave that ticked. The important thing to notice here is that the sync and backup. Again, I think, as I said before, I would just forget backup, put that to one side. But where it says preferences, we've got some important stuff. So start OneDrive when I sign into Windows. Definitely make sure that's on. On is what we want it to be doing. Now, this is where it gets a little bit more perhaps confusing. Pause syncing when this device is on a metered network. So I would forget about this unless you're in a situation where you know your network is going to be restricted for one reason or another. Now that might well be you're abroad and maybe you're tethering to a mobile phone and your data is very expensive, or maybe you are trying to do a lot of different stuff at the same time using the internet in a place where the bandwidth or the internet performance is not very good. Now you might want then in those circumstances certainly to pause syncing when it's on a metered network, or as it says, a metered network. If you're perhaps the other instance is an airport where you might buy 5 gigabytes of download, for example. Again, that's a situation where you might want to turn that on. Having said which, on is the default, so probably leave that one alone. Underneath that, there's some advanced settings, which I'm not going to get into the detail of here because it's to do with upload and download rates and being able to manually configure those. The key piece to look at here is this Files on Demand box. And we've got primarily two choices. We've got free up disk space and download all files. So one of those is going to free up some disk space, essentially by removing some of the files that might be stored locally on our PC. Now don't worry, it's not deleting them, it's just removing them from our local PC because they're all of course still held in the cloud. And that just means that next time we want them, we're going to be downloading more stuff from the cloud. But it will create some space on our hard disk drive if that's a consideration. Now equally, the other option we've got here is download all files. And again, it's important just to be aware of how much hard disk space we've got, because OneDrive for Business by default will give you 1 terabyte of storage. So if your hard drive is only 512 gigabytes and you've got 700 gigabytes of data sat in OneDrive, downloading all files might not be appropriate. And it will warn you. So once you click download all files, it will tell you it's going to use up X amount of space on your PC, and you can decide at that point whether to continue or not. Just for the purposes of showing, I'm going to click continue, and what you'll see is it's now opened up the File Explorer, and under the status you can see everything is ticked green. That means everything is now downloaded locally to our machine, and the fact that it's in a round green circle means that we've manually configured it to do that, and everything we put in OneDrive is going to be downloaded that way. Now, just for the purposes of demonstration, I'll come back to this window and I will click free up disk space, and it's going to say tell you what it's doing, and I am going to press continue. Now what you can see is it's taken all of the files which had been synced to my local device. It's taken all of them and just put them in the cloud. It's great, I hear you say. It's great. We know how we can download everything and we know how we can make sure nothing is downloaded, but what if we need a bit more control than that and we want to, predetermine which files are going to be saved locally? Because, I want X folder to be on my laptop for the weekend because I've got a load of work I need to do on that, and then I want it to be synced when I connect back up to the internet. Maybe I'm going on a long trip. So we can do that. If we go to the File Explorer and we find either the file or the folder we want to ensure is synced locally, we right mouse click, and you will see there's an option here for always keep on this device. Now if I press that always keep on this device, you'll see the little 2 arrows going round indicating that it's syncing, and we've now got the solid green tick. Now that solid green tick, if you recall, is different from the tick we saw when I opened the file. So let me just demonstrate by opening test file 2. What we'll notice when we open and close test file 2 is that we've got a green tick in a white circle, that indicates it's a file which OneDrive has determined should be synced because we've just opened it. But that's not necessarily always going to be the case. It might be that, after a set period of time, OneDrive may decide that that should no longer be synced. And then that would revert to being a cloud-based file. Whereas this one, because it's solid green, is telling us that's always, unless we do something, that's always going to be synced. So we need a bit more of a detailed way to manage that. So what we need to do is, if we right mouse click a folder that contains documents we want to sync, we can choose always keep on this device, and you'll see that's now gone green. If there had been a lot of documents in there, of course, it's going to take a while to sync. So you'll notice there's a revolving pair of arrows, and that indicates that a file or a folder is in the process of syncing. So don't interrupt it, and obviously disconnect from the internet if that's happening. And then once we finish with that, we can right mouse click again, and we can you can see where it says always keep on this device. That's currently ticked because we just selected it. So we could untick that, and then that would revert to being available via the cloud. So now I just want to show you how to get files into OneDrive. Perhaps you've been sent a file, or perhaps you're just setting up OneDrive and you want to make sure files are in OneDrive from another location. So what I've got here is I've got two file explorers open. I've got one with my OneDrive open. As you can see, we've got these two test files. In fact, what I might just do to make this a bit easier is create a new folder and call it a test folder. And I could take the two files which I'd already created and put those in the test folder. Now I've got another folder open over here, which, as you can see, is just my downloads folder. And I've got a couple of sample files in the downloads folder. So if I take one of these sample files, of course, remembering the downloads folder is on the local PC. These are not in OneDrive. It's not synced, and we haven't done any of that configuring backup. We're not going to do that. So if we want to get one of these files into OneDrive, just simply click on it, drag it and drop it into the folder in OneDrive where we want it to go. You'll see the syncing arrows. It's syncing that data up to OneDrive, and that's now reverted to the cloud. And if we click in that folder, we can now see there's the sample files available in there. So there's another way of doing it, which I'm going to show you now, and we'll flick in and out of this for various reasons as we move on. But I'm going to open a web browser, and I'm going to go to office.com, because OneDrive is available through the office.com web app. So we open office.com, the very far top left, you'll see just next to where it says Microsoft 365, you'll see the waffle symbol. If you click on the waffle, then you'll see at the top of the apps there, actually, OneDrive is there. And again, you've got the three dots so that you could pin it to the launcher or open it in a new tab if that's what you want to do. Click on OneDrive. We can see we've got our home, and the home location within this window is always going to be the files you've used most recently. So we'll have a look at what some of these folders are. The home folder, as we've said, is where the most recent stuff will be, and you can filter according to the document type, as you can see by choosing one of these buttons along the top. We obviously haven't got any other types of document other than Word there. Next, we're going to look at My Files. So My Files really just recreates the folder structure we've got in our OneDrive on our desktop. So if we look in our test folder, which we've just created, we'll see we've got two new files, and the three little blue lines indicate that those are new files. And to the right of that, we've got the three dots, and we've got a whole host of options. We'll look at some of them a bit later, probably not all of them. We've got an option to favorite something as well. So if you wanted to make it a favorite, simply click on the star, and then over on the left-hand side, that will be marked to go into your favorites. And if you want to unfavorite it, it doesn't matter where, either in the original folder or in the favorites, you can just click the star again and it will be removed from your favorites. Now, I just want to come on to talking a little bit about sharing and collaboration with OneDrive. Obviously, the features aren't as strong as SharePoint, but there are limitations with general email systems and with Outlook and sending large files and stuff like that. So OneDrive will give us the ability to share documents or folders with other people, and we've got quite a lot of control over how we do it. Not as much as SharePoint, but still quite a lot. And the other important thing it allows us to do is to collaborate. I could share a document with a colleague and they would be able to edit that document at the same time as me. So we could log on together, perhaps from different locations. We could share the same document. We could be working on the same document live. So I'm going to cover some of the principles around sharing and some of the do's and don'ts, and also some of the options and how to use it. I hope it's helpful. Great. So now we'll look at sharing. We've got a folder open. We've got some files in it. Let's say we want to share one of these files. It could equally be a folder. It doesn't make any difference. Principles are all still the same. We right mouse click. We go down to OneDrive. The first option is sharing. Now that's going to give us all of the options, including the ones that are in the list below in the list. So let's just click share so I can talk through them first. So in this instance, it's going to ask us for a name of the individual we want to share with. Let's just type my name, and then we could add a message, hi. Now, if we were to press send at this point, the recipient is going to get a message which really comes from SharePoint, because SharePoint sits on the back end of it. And it's going to be a nicely formatted message that gives a link to the document, not an attachment. It'll be a link, and it will pass my message on, and it will say, please use this. Now, if I click that link, as we've said, we could collaborate on it. We could do all kinds of things with it. But the important thing to look at and consider in this box is that we've got here, anyone with a link can edit. Now that's really important to consider for a couple of reasons. First of all, because the recipient may either intentionally or unintentionally forward that, and then of course your document may be being shared with people you hadn't intended it to be shared with. And the other thing is that because this is a live document, it's sitting in the cloud, that link, unless you set some parameters around it, could be shared in perpetuity. And of course that document might be updated, and it might be updated to include things that you wouldn't want to be shared in the future. So in fact, an admin can default on the back end of 365 that, for instance, even if you use this, anyone with a link can edit, that it will be limited to a 30-day, and that's sort of best practice. People would limit that to 30 days. Let's just, for the moment, not send this. Let's click on anyone with a link can edit and look at what options we've got. So the first option is anyone can edit. The second option is people in my group or my organization. The third one is people who've got existing access, perhaps through permissions or because of SharePoint. And the fourth one is people you choose. So that's probably quite a good one to know. You can selectively choose the people you're going to share a document with. Now, in the event you are going to share it with anyone, we've got some additional settings underneath, and these will change as we'll see in a minute. But we've got some additional settings, so we can choose whether they can edit a document, whether they can review, which means they can open it and they can suggest changes, they can do some markup, but they can't do much, they can't do anything else, or whether they can just view, which means they can't do anything. So if we were to choose, so actually I'll just click back, we can set an expiry date. So like I say, the default is 30 days for this, but we could set an expiry date here. We could put a password on the document. So maybe if there's got some sensitive information, I could, this is another way of reducing who could open it, but obviously don't put the password in the email that goes with the document. If I was actually to choose can edit to just can view, I've got this option here as well. So I could actually block the download of that document, which is a really useful thing to be able to do in certain circumstances. Now, if I click down through these other options, you'll see what variables I can change underneath, adapt according to the option I'm choosing. So let's just carry on for the moment with anyone. We'll click apply, and we will click send in a second. Let me just explain. We can copy a link. So if we click send, my as I said before, my nicely formatted sort of SharePoint message is going to go out with my note. But equally, I might actually choose to make it part of a bigger email. I might be working on a project which I actually want to incorporate several links, or maybe it's a sort of long email explaining lots of stuff. I've got the option here to copy a link. So if I press copy link, you will notice that now if I go to Notepad, just to show you, if I paste it, it's now created a link to that document. Anybody can use that link. They can go into a web browser and paste it, and it's going to take them to the document. If you were to paste that in an Outlook or other email application, it would turn it into what's called a hyperlink. Those are the ones that are underlined and written in blue, and it means you just click on it and it takes you straight to the document. So that's really how to create and share documents. Now we've shared that document. So the other important thing to note now in the status is we've got a symbol to say we've shared the document. And it's really important to keep track of what documents we shared for information security purposes. So I also wanted to just highlight that a really easy way, because of course you can go through your folders and you can try and find the ones that you may or may not have shared. A really easy way to do that is to go to the web app. So we will come back to our web browser. We'll go back to our OneDrive Web App, and you'll see on the left-hand side, underneath My Files, which we looked at a few minutes ago, you'll see Shared. So if you click on Shared, you'll see at the top there are two tabs. There's Shared With You. Obviously, those are links that other people have provided and shared with you, and that's a really nice way of finding them, because rather than trawling through emails and trying to think, oh, somebody sent me, so-and-so sent me a document, I can't find it. You can find everything that's been shared with you there, and you can also find everything that's been shared by you. So there we go, there's that file I shared. Now maybe things have changed and I've decided I don't want to share that file anymore. So I can come into here, click those three dots, and I can then come down to Manage Access, and I can see it's shared with two people, and I can view it. So I can click at the top. I could simply click Stop Sharing, or I could come to the links, because obviously I created a link to it, and I can remove that link. Either way, we'll come back here. You'll see the Stop Sharing has now gone, because that file is no longer shared with anybody. And so now if we go back into our test folder, you'll see that status of being shared has gone, and that document is no longer shared. We can remove the link, or we can add a link, and we can do all of that stuff. We can view online, which just takes us to the document online, and we can also see a version history. So I think maybe we'll start looking at some of the history functionality now. So if I open this document in Word, I'm just going to make a change at the top. If I go to the top of the screen, you'll see the little drop down arrow. If I click it, it'll tell me what the file name is, and it will tell me the location of the file, and it will tell me, well, in this case, I haven't got sensitivity. That's a conversation for a different video, and that would only really be available for people with certain licensing. And version history is at the bottom, but we haven't got any history at the moment. So that just tells us where the file's saved. So let's just close that file. Do we want to save our changes? Yes, we do. And now you will see, if I right mouse click, go to OneDrive, and I look at the version history, you can see it was modified. You can see who it was modified by and when it was modified. And if we were to click the original version, we have got the ability to view that, or we've got the ability to restore it to the original version. Now, there is also a way of sharing directly from within Word or any other application. If you go to the top right, you can see the same configuration settings as we've just been through up there. If we were to look at the version history in Word, we can come up to where the file name is, click the drop down, we can click on version history, and it will highlight for us what the differences are in each version and who's changed it and when it was changed. So you can click through the version history over here on the right, and you can choose whether the edits are shown or not. And if you look up here on the top left, it's telling us this is the current version and the date and time, and that is the previous version. And we've got this little button here. We could restore to an earlier version if we wanted to. So although this version control isn't nearly as powerful perhaps as in SharePoint, it's pretty powerful. And it means that when we've got autosave turned on, especially, that new versions will be being created all the time. So if all of a sudden you realize there's a significant chunk of a document that's not how you want it to be, it's quite easy to revert to an earlier version of the document using exactly this method. We're primarily focusing on OneDrive Business, but we've talked about OneDrive versus SharePoint. We've talked about version control. We've talked about sharing. We've talked about getting documents in. We've talked about setting up. We've talked about syncing. So we're getting towards the end. There's not much more to say, but I did want to just touch on using OneDrive alongside SharePoint, because SharePoint's primarily an online tool, whereas OneDrive can, as we've seen, be used offline by way of using the sync function. Similarly, there are reasons why people may want to sync stuff to OneDrive. Well, I suppose for familiarity more than anything else, because for some people working with document libraries in SharePoint is more unwieldy than just using a folder structure. So I just want to finish up, before we get to the troubleshooting and wrap up, I just want to finish up by showing you how you can sync a whole document library as a folder within OneDrive. So now we're in our SharePoint test site, and as you can see, we're in a library. The important thing to notice is if we want to sync a library as a folder back to our OneDrive, not to select anything. If we select one of these, we're going to lose the button we need. The button we need is this one up here, which is Add Shortcut to OneDrive. If I click something, you won't get it. So you need to sync the whole library. So we'll do that. We'll click Add Shortcut to OneDrive. So it's now created a folder, as you can see. If I just minimize that for a moment, and I open my OneDrive folder, I'm going to need to refresh. So I will close those just for a moment. It's important, sometimes SharePoint does take a couple of seconds to sync as well. But here you go, we can see we've got Documents Test Site. That was exactly the folder we've just synced. If we wanted to make this permanent in terms of being able to download all of the files, if we click it for the moment, you'll see the status is in the cloud. Again, all we need to do is right mouse click on the left and click Always Keep on this device, and that will mean we've got a local copy so we can work with it offline. When we finish working with that library and we want to remove it from our OneDrive, all you need to do is select the folder, right mouse click, go down to OneDrive, and then go down to Remove Shortcut, click Remove Shortcut, and that shortcut will then be removed from the OneDrive. Now, I realise we've covered quite a lot in this video already. I hoped we might get a chance to do a bit of a look at the mobile app. I think in the interest of time, that may be best saved for another video. But I will say that the mobile app, OneDrive Mobile, is available for download on iOS and Android. Very much worth downloading. Everything we've talked about gets synced across to that. So libraries will be synced across to that. Your shared documents will be synced across to that. All of the documents which reside in your OneDrive. Similarly, you can make those available offline. You can use them with the mobile versions of the Microsoft apps. The one thing I should say is use of any of this information on a non-company device will be up to the discretion of your IT department, so it may or may not be possible. But in the OneDrive app, there are some additional functions as well, like being able to use the camera to scan documents and store them in OneDrive. So I would just recommend having a play. I think the last thing to kind of wrap things up is just to talk a little bit about troubleshooting. So we've already talked about the fact that sometimes OneDrive doesn't run and we need to make sure it's running. But I think the other thing worth just saying is that if OneDrive appears to be stuck for any reason, you can always stop the syncing. So if you're in the process of trying to sync a file, stop that syncing and then restart it. You can always restart OneDrive. So just quit OneDrive and then restart it, and whether that's a Mac or a Windows machine. And obviously make sure you've got a decent internet connection, because if you haven't got a decent internet connection, that may well be causing the problems. So like I've said, in relation to perhaps using things like Teams Phone, it might be worth connecting to your network via a cable instead of using the Wi-Fi. Anyway, I think that's really it in a nutshell as far as OneDrive's concerned. Thank you very much for watching. I really hope, as always, this has been useful. Please do put comments down below, and please do like, subscribe and get notified. Thank you very much for watching. Take care.